Shabbat! Welcome to the Philadelphia Assemblies. Today is the 7th day of the 3rd month of the year 5781. It's also the 2nd day of June, or second day of the 6th month of 2021 on the Gregorian calendar. So again, as I said, welcome to the Philadelphia Assemblies. We're going to continue our expository teaching today in the book of Ezekiel the prophet. We're going to be starting in chapter 38, and this is part 7 of this series. And we're going to go about an hour to get as much in as we can and yet not go too long. So let's go ahead and turn to the east, where the temple was and where it will be, and where it's prophesied it'll be again in Jerusalem, and open in prayer. Almighty Father Yahuwah, we praise you in all things. Father, we praise you for another day. We praise you for being some of your called out ones, Father. We praise you that you have chosen us. And Father, we hope that we someday will be chosen, or we will be in your good graces and be raised in the first resurrection. We thank you for your hedge of protection from the plague that's been upon the whole world. We ask that you continue that. We also pray for those that are sick, and pray for those that have lost loved ones, that they be strengthened and given that peace that passes understanding. Whether they be sick from cancer or whatever it may be, Father, we ask for healing for those that are called, and those that are being called, and those that are yet to be called for that priesthood after the order of Melchizedek. We ask again, Father, that you would send us an extra anointing or unction of your Ruach HaKodesh, your Holy Spirit that you promised, Father. We ask that you would teach us as we go to the book of Ezekiel, the prophet, and help us to give us understanding through that Spirit that dwells within us. We ask all these things in your precious Son, Yahushua's name. Amen. Okay, we'll just dive right in. And the word of Yahuwah, or the Ruach HaKodesh, his spirit, the spirit of the Ruach of Elohim, the Malach of Elohim. I can't emphasize that enough to get that in your understanding, to realize that this is not our Messiah. He was not yet born, but he was prophesied of, but it was the body that was being prepared for Yahuwah's spirit, the Ruach. Okay, let's keep that in our understanding. So again, chapter 38 starts out, and the word, or the messenger of Yahuwah, came unto me, Ezekiel the prophet, saying, all in red, the whole rest of the chapter, okay? So it's all, thus saith Yahuwah. He said, Son of man, the Ruach said to Ezekiel, he said, Son of man, set your face against Gog, and the land of Magog, and the chief prince of Meshish and Tubal, and prophesy or preach against him, and say, Thus saith Adonai Yahuwah, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech, and Tubal. I'm not pronouncing that exactly right. And I will turn you back and put hooks into your jaws, and I will bring you forth, and all your army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with shields, or large shields and small shields, and all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shields or bucklers, and a helmet. Gomer and all his bands, or his armies. You house of Togarmah, of the month quarters, and all his bands or armies, and many people with you. Be you prepared and prepare for yourself, prepare you for yourself, and all your company that are assembled unto you, and be you a guard unto them. After many days you will be visited in the latter years, you shall come unto the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people, against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste. Okay? But it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. Okay? And it's talking about the nations, and that's talking about the time when Israel is cast out or cut off. You shall ascend and come like a storm. You shall be like a cloud to cover the land, and all your armies or bands or companies, and many people with you. Thus saith Adonai Yahuwah, it will come to pass that at the same time will things come into your mind, and you shall think evil thoughts. Verse 11, and you shall say, or you will say, I will go up to the land of unwalled villages. I will go to them that are at rest. In other words, they're not fighting. That dwell safely. All of them living without walls and having neither bars nor gates. To take for a prize or a plunder, and to take for a prey or a spoil or loot. To turn your hand upon the desolate places. Okay, the places that aren't the big mighty places that are now inhabited, upon the people that are gathered out of the nations. In other words, not just Israel, but out of all nations, which have gotten cattle and goods, that dwell in the midst of the land. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, will say unto you, are you come to take a spoil? Have you gathered the company, your company, to take it for a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take great plunder? Therefore, Son of man, preach and say unto God, thus saith Adonai Yahuwah, in that day when my people of Israel dwell safely, shall you not know it? Question, will you not know it? Verse 15, and you shall come from your place out of the northern parts, you and many people with you, all of them riding upon horses, a great army and a mighty army. This is talked about in Revelation 20, verse 8. Okay, Gog and Magog. Okay, this is the one they want to call the army, the Battle of Armageddon. Okay, which physically this may very well be talking about that, but spiritually there's come against Gog and Magog after the 1,000-year reign, as you read in Revelation 20, verse 8. That's why I said this is where this is spoken of. And you will come up against my people of Israel. That's the camp of the saints in Revelation 20. As a cloud, that means very many, to cover the land. It shall be in the latter days, in the very last days after the millennial reign. And I will bring you against my land, okay, surround the camp of the saints, that the nations may know me when I shall be set apart in you, O Gog, before their eyes. Read Revelation chapter 20. You'll understand that in the latter part of Revelation 20. Thus saith Adonai Yahuwah, are you of whom I have spoken in old time by my servants, the prophets of Israel, which prophesied in those days many years that I would bring you against them? And that's just talking about the multitude of the nations that surround the camp of the saints in Revelation chapter 20. And it shall come to pass at that same time, when Gog shall come against the land of Israel, saith Adonai Yahuwah, that my fury shall come up in my face. In other words, he's going to be very angry. And that's when he's going to actually destroy them, because fire is going to rain down out of heaven. That's what that's talking about. His face, in this case, talking about his ruach, his power. His fury will come up in his face, because that's the one that Israel saw. They never saw Yahuwah's face. They saw the ruach's face. For in my jealousy and in the fire of my wrath, or my anger, again, that lake of fire at that great white throne judgment, have I spoken. Surely in that day there shall be a great shaking in the land of Israel. so that the fishes of the sea and the fowls of the heaven and the beasts of the field and all the creeping things that creep upon the earth, and all the men that are upon the face of the entire earth shall shake at my presence, because Yahuwah himself is going to come down, and the whole earth is going to be destroyed, including everything on it except for the elect. He's going to have to create a new heaven and new earth at my presence, Yahuwah's presence. At the mountains shall be thrown down, and the steep places shall fall, and every way shall fall to the ground. The whole earth is going to be destroyed. It would run away, but there's no place found for it to run. And I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, saith Adonai Yahuwah. Every man's sword shall be against his brother. And I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood, and I will rain upon him. Fire is going to rain down on them. I will rain upon them. And upon his bands or armies, and upon the many people that are with him, with Satan, and overflowing rain, great hailstones, fire and brimstone. Thus will I magnify myself and sanctify or set apart myself, and I will be known in the eyes of many nations, and they shall know that I am Yahuwah. Chapter 39. Therefore you, Son of man, speaking to Ezekiel, preach against Gog, and say, Thus saith Adonai Yahuwah, Behold, I am against you, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn you back and leave but the sixth part of you, and will cause you to come up from the north parts, and will bring you upon the mountains of Israel. Okay, this is in the last days of the millennial reign, after Satan's loosed for a short season. And I will smite your bow out of your left hand, and I will cause your arrows to fall out of your right hand. You shall fall upon the mountains of Israel, you and all your armies, and the people that are with you. I will give you unto the ravens, birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. Revelation 19, verse 17. Okay? You shall fall upon the open field, for I have spoken it, saith Adonai Yahuwah. And I will send in fire on Magog. Read Revelation 20. Okay? And among them, and dwell, and he's going to remain among them in the coastlands. Okay? In other words, all their borders. And they shall know that I am Yahuwah. So will I make my set-apart name known in the midst of my people, Israel as well. They'll know too that he's Yahuwah. And I will not let them profane my set-apart name anymore. And the nation shall know that I am Yahuwah, the set-apart one of Israel. It's not Messiah, it's the Father, Yahuwah, or Yahweh, or Jehovah. Verse 9. And they that dwell in the cities of Israel shall go forth, and will set on fire and burn the weapons, both the, I'll get it turned here in just a second, they're sticking together. The large shields and the small shields, are the small shields and the bucklers, which are large shields, the bows and the arrows, the war clubs and the spears, and they shall burn them with fire 7 years, so that they shall take no wood out of the field, neither cut down any out of the forest. For they shall burn the weapons with fire, and they shall spoil or destroy or plunder those that plundered them, Israel, and rob those that robbed them, saith Adonai Yahuwah. And that part of it is going to happen prior to the millennial reign. Right when our Messiah comes back and he gathers his elect. Verse 11, and it shall come to pass in that day that I will give unto Gog a place there of graves in Israel. Okay? I'm going to give him a place of graves in Israel. At that time. Okay? Let's... in Israel, the valley of the passengers on the east of the sea, and it shall stop the noises of the passengers, and there shall they bury Gog and all his multitude, and they shall call it the valley of, it should be Hinnom, okay, Gog, because we're talking about, Gehenna, okay, in Greek, which is referring to Hinnom, the valley of Hinnom, Gog, okay, Hamagog is what's got here in Hebrew, in English translation. Verse 12, and 7 months shall the house of Israel be buried of them by the multitudes for 7 months, that they may cleanse the land. Yes, all the people of the land shall bury them. Talking about Israel. It shall be to them a memorial day, a memorable day, that I will be glorified or honored, saith Adonai Yahuwah. And they shall set apart men of continual employment, passing through the land to bury the passengers or the travelers. That's what passengers would have been better translated to, the travelers. When you read Revelation 20, they come from all over. That's why he's calling them travelers. Those that remain upon the face of the earth to cleanse it prior to the millennial reign, and then after the millennial reign, this same area will be a spiritual battle. And after the end of 7 months shall they search, and the travelers that pass through the land, when any see a man's bone, then shall he set up a sign or a marker by it till the buriers have buried it in the valley of Hamagog, again, which is talking about of Hinnom, or Gehenna. You're going to have to go back and tie all that back together. We realize that area is what King Josiah burned all the pagan images and everything. And then Israel took their trash there and it burned continually. This is a place that's marked, and there's a marker put on the land, not physically but spiritually, marker put on the land where the final battles will be held. And also the name of the city shall be Hamona. Thus or like this will they cleanse the land. And you, son of man, this say Yahuwah, Adonai Yahuwah. In other words, speak unto every feathered fowl and to every beast of the field, assemble yourselves and come together, assemble yourselves and come gather yourselves on every side to my sacrifice that I do for you, even a great sacrifice upon the mountains of Israel, that you may eat flesh and drink blood. Now physically they're not going to do that, okay? That's talking about the cleansing of the land. Verse 18, you shall eat the flesh of the mighty. That means you'll have control over them, their bodies, and drink the blood of the princes of the earth. Doesn't mean physically drink blood, because that's against the Torah. It's talking about that you're going to have their life. You're going to take over their life, because remember, the life's in the blood. And then it says, of the earth, of rams, of lambs, and of goats, and of bullocks, all of them fatlings of Bashan. And you shall eat fat. You shall eat fat till you be full, and drink blood till you be drunken. In other words, take of their lives until you have lost your sense of being stable. Okay, instead of following the ways of Yahuwah, they'll be following the ways of man. Of my sacrifice, which I have sacrificed for you. You're going to misuse it. Verse 20, thus you will be filled at my table with horses. See, that's part of the thing, trusting in horses and not in Yahuwah. We all know where that comes from. And the chariots with the mighty men, and with all men of war, saith Adonai Yahuwah. That's what they're going to be drunk on, that power. Verse 21, And I will set my glory, which is his Ruach, among the nations. And he's already started that process. He's allowed that Spirit to go out through the nations. And all the nations shall see my judgment of it on Israel, that I have executed, and my hand that I have laid upon them. Okay? So the house of Israel shall know that I am Yahuwah their Elohim from that day forward. And the nation shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their lawlessness, because that's what they got to see. They got to see justice done, because they trespassed against me. So the rest of the world has to see that example of what happens when you trespass against Yahuwah. Therefore hid I my face from them, Israel, physical, and gave them unto the hand of their enemies. So fell they all by the sword. Remember in Romans chapter 11 it tells us not to be proud, not to be too proud, lest we suffer the same fate. According to their uncleanliness and according to their transgressions have I done unto them, and hid my face from them. Therefore, this saith Adonai Yahuwah, now will I restore the fortunes of Jacob, and have mercy upon the whole house of Israel, and will be jealous, or zealous would have been a better translation. In other words, we know what zealous is, for my holy or my set apart name. One Israel would be zealous for his set apart name. And that's all got to be fulfilled. Okay, and it's not yet been fulfilled, because the fullness of the Gentiles or the nations have not yet come in and received that Spirit that he just spoke of. Okay? After that, that doesn't mean some of Israel's not being grafted in now, because that's not true either. Okay? Israel's being grafted in just like the Gentiles, but until the fullness of the Gentiles are come in, according to Romans chapter 11, the rest of Israel, that's a whole lot of them that are not yet converted, shall come in. Verse 26, and that's not everyone, that's the rest of them that have been in covenant with the Most High. Verse 26, after that they have borne their shame, Israel has borne their shame, paid their penalty for their lawlessness, and all their trespasses, in other words, whereby they have trespassed against me, they've received justice, when they dwelt safely in their land, and none made them afraid. It's going to be restored to that. Okay, that's before that they were cut off. Verse 27, when I have brought them again from the people and gathered them out of their armies, this is when our Messiah returns, our Mashiach, okay, our anointed one, because again, that's what Mashiach means, anointed one with oil, and the Spirit is what our Messiah is anointed with, not just a ceremonial oil that was pointing towards the Spirit. Okay, and right now that Spirit's being poured out on all nations, as we just read. And gather them out of their armies, lands, and this is Israel, not just physical. This will be physical, but also spiritual Israel will be gathered at that time too. It's the first resurrection. And am sanctified or set apart in them in the sight of many nations. Okay? And that just means that when he gathers his elect, his called out ones from the four corners of the heaven, Matthew chapter 24, okay, when he gathers all those together, okay, then the other nations, okay, being Israel physical and those yet in the rest of the nations, they're going to know that Israel, spiritual Israel, is set apart. Verse 28, then will they know that I, Yahuwah their Elohim, which caused them to be led into captivity, Israel, the nation, among the nations, but I have gathered them unto their own land, and that's talking about the physical ones back to their own land. Now some will be going to their new land as well. Obviously we're going to be the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek, whether we're natural born or grafted in a wild olive branch. Okay? So it says, which caused them to be led into captivity, physical Israel, which caused them to be, among the nations. So they were in captivity among the nations, but I have gathered them unto their own land. That's only the ones that kept the covenant with him, and have left none of them any more there in the land. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I have poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel. Okay, and the house of Israel at this time is going to be the complete house of the physical Israel, as well as the grafted in wild olive branch, saith Adonai Yahuwah. That spirit is now being poured out upon the nations, which includes physical Israel, some of them. Chapter 40. In the 25th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, and this is all thus saith Ezekiel, by the way, until I say otherwise. It says, in the 25th year of our captivity, in the beginning of the year, in the 10th day of the month, or the first month, in the 14th year, after that city was smitten or struck, in the self same day, or in that same day that they were struck, the hand of Yahuwah, okay, which is the Ruach, or the Malach, either way, it's talking about the spirit of Yahuwah was upon me, Ezekiel, he's telling you that, and brought me here, or brought me there. I'm sorry, not here, but brought me there. In the visions of Elohim brought he me into the land of Israel, and set me upon a very high mountain, just like he did our Messiah later on, by which was the structure of the city on the south, or the frame, or in the King James, the structure. And he brought me there, and behold, there was a man whose appearance was like the appearance of brass, with a fine line of flax in his hand, and a measuring reed. Okay? And he stood in the gate. And the man said unto me, now this is just Ezekiel repeating it, Son of man, and I would imagine it's the Ruach, but it could be some other messenger. And the man said unto me, Son of man, behold with your eyes, and hear with your ears, and give attention to hear upon all that I show you, for to the intent that I might show them unto you, are you brought here, or for the reason why you were brought here. Declare all that you see in the house of Israel. In other words, preach all that you see. And behold, a wall on the outside of the house round about, and in the man's hand a measuring reed of 6 cubits long by the cubit, and a hand, and hand width, the width of the hand. So he measured the width of the building 1 reed, and the height 1 reed. Then came he unto the gate which looked toward the east. Let's talk about the east gate of the temple. And went up the stairs thereof, and measured the threshold of the gate, because this is telling them how to rebuild the temple in the millennial reign. Before the millennial reign, that's what this is talking about, which was 1 reed, and the other threshold of the gate, which was 1 reed broad. And every little chamber or room was 1 reed long and 1 reed wide, and between one of the little chambers were 5 cubits, an area between each of those chambers or rooms, and the threshold of the gate by the porch of the gate was 1 reed in width. So it's measuring out how the temple is to be rebuilt. He measured also the porch of the gate within 1 reed, so it was measured within that. Then measured the porch of the gate 8 cubits, and the post thereof 2 cubits, and the porch of the gate was inward on the inside, toward the inside. Verse 10, and the little rooms of the gate eastward were 3 on this side and 3 on that side, so they numbered 3. They 3 were of 1 measure, they were all the same size. And the post had one measure on this side and on that side. So he's seeing this vision of the temple being rebuilt. And he measured the width of the entry of the gate to be 10 cubits, and the length of the gate to be 13 cubits. So obviously it wasn't squared. The place also before the little room was 1 cubit on this side, and the space was 1 cubit on that side, and the little room, or enclaves, were 6 cubits on this side and 6 cubits on that side. He measured then the gate for the roof of one little room to the roof of another. The width was 5 and 20 or 25 cubits, door against door, or in other words, door facing door. Verse 14, he made also posts of 60 cubits, 60, even unto the post of the court round about the gate, or around the gate. And from the face of the gate of the entrance into the face of the porch of the inner gate were 50 cubits. Okay, 50 cubits. And there were narrow windows to the little chambers and to their post within the gate round about, and likewise to the arches, and windows were round about inward. In other words, to the inside there was windows, and upon each post were palm trees carved. I added the word carved. Verse 17, then he brought me into the outward court, or the outside court, and lo, there were rooms and pavement made for the court round about. So it's talking about a flooring round about. 30 rooms were upon the pavement, so they were right on the ground, and whatever they had for pavement. Verse 18, the pavement by the side of the gates over against the length of the gates was the lower pavement. Okay, then he measured the width from the forefront of the lower gate unto the forefront of the inner court outside 100 cubits eastward and northward. And the gate of the outward court that looked toward the north, he measured the length thereof and the width thereof. And the little room thereof were 3 on this side and 3 on that side. And the posts thereof and the arches thereof were after the measure of the first gate. The length thereof was 50 cubits, and the width 25 cubits. And their windows and their arches and their palm trees were after the measure of the gate that looked toward the east, or toward the east gate. And the arches thereof were before them. And the gate of the inner court was opposite the gate toward the north and toward the east, and he measured from gate to gate 100 cubits. After that he brought me toward the south, and behold, a gate toward the south, and he measured the posts thereof and the arches thereof according to these measures. And there were windows in it, and in the arches thereof round about like those windows, and length was 50 cubits, and the width was 25 cubits, and there was 7 steps to go up to it, and the arches of it were before them, and it had palm trees, one on this side and another on that side, upon the posts thereof. And there was a gate in the inner court toward the south, and he measured from gate to gate toward the south 100 cubits. And he brought me to the inner court by the south gate. He measured the south gate according to these measures. And the little rooms thereof, and the posts thereof, and the arches thereof according to these measures. And there were windows in it, and in the arches thereof round about it, or all around it. It was 50 cubits and 25 cubits wide. And the arches about or around were 25 cubits long, and 5 cubits wide. And the arches thereof were toward the outer court, and the palm trees were upon the posts thereof, or carved on the posts. And the going up to it had 8 steps. And he brought me into the inner court toward the east, and he measured the gate according to the measures. And the little rooms thereof, and the posts thereof, and the arches thereof were according to these measures. And there were windows therein, and in the arches thereof round about, or all around. It was 50 cubits long, and 25 cubits wide. And the arches thereof were toward the outward court, and palm trees were upon the posts thereof on this side and on that side. And the going up to it had 8 steps. And he brought me to the northern gate and measured it according to the same measurements. Okay? So it's important to understand he's watching in this vision the rebuilding of the temple, exactly how it's going to be. 36. The little rooms thereof, the posts thereof, and the arches thereof, and the windows thereof, just see, of it, and the windows to it round about, or all around. The length was 50 cubits, and the width was 25 cubits. And the posts of it were toward the outer court, and palm trees were upon the post of it on this side and on that side. And the going up, and as you went up to it, it had 8 steps to approach it. I had to approach it. Verse 38. And the rooms and the entries of it were by the post of the gates, where they washed the burnt offering. So it's telling you exactly where this was in the temple, and they would have knew that back how it was in the temple prior to this too. Okay? In Solomon's temple. Okay? They wouldn't have known about the next one, but they would have knew about Solomon's temple. No, I think they would have knew about that one too. Excuse me. I'm getting confused in my mind on timing. Okay, verse 39. And in the porch of the gate were 2 tables on this side and 2 tables on that side, to slay on it the burnt offerings. In other words, to kill or sacrifice the burnt offerings and the sin offering, because sacrifice means to slaughter. Okay? And the sin offering and the trespass offering. And the side on the outside, as one goes up to the entry of the north gate, were 2 tables. And on the other side, which was at the porch of the gate, were 2 tables. 4 tables were on this side, and 4 tables on that side. By the side of the gate, 8 tables where they slew their sacrifices, or their slaughter offerings. Verse 42. And for the 4 tables were dressed or carved stone for the burnt offerings of a cubit and on a half long, cubit and a half long, and a cubit and a half wide, and 1 cubit high, whereupon also they laid the instruments that they slew the burnt offerings with, and the burnt offerings and sacrifices with. And within were hooks, broad hooks fastened round, or all around. And upon the tables was the flesh of the offering. He was seeing a vision of there being actual offerings of flesh on the altar. And outside the inner gate were rooms of the singers, or the psalmists, in the inner court, which was at the side of the north gate, and their prospect was toward the south. In other words, they faced towards the south. One at the side of the east gate, having the prospect toward the north, in other words, facing towards the north. And he said unto me, this room, whose is facing towards the south, is for the priest of the Kohanim, and the keepers of the rule of the house, Verse 46. And the room which is facing toward the north is for the Kohanim, or the priests, the keepers of the charge of the altar. These are the sons of Zodok, which are the sons of Aaron, among the sons of Levi, which come near to Yahuwah to minister unto him. Okay? So he measured the court, and what they were coming near to was his Ruach, not him personally. Okay? So he measured the court 100 cubits long and 100 cubits wide, 80, or another 4 square, so same all the way around. And the altar that was before the house. And he brought me to the porch of the house, and measured each post of the porch, 5 cubits on this side and 5 cubits on that side. And the width of the gate was 3 cubits on this side and 3 cubits on that side. The length of the porch was 20 cubits, and the width 11 cubits. And he brought me by the steps whereby they went up to it, and there were pillars by the post, one on this side and another on that side. Chapter 41. Afterward he brought me to the temple, and measured the post 6 cubits wide on one side and 6 cubits wide on the other side, which was the width of the tabernacle. And the width of the door was 10 cubits. The sides of the door were 5 cubits on the one side, and 5 cubits on the other side. And he measured the length of it 40 cubits, and the width 20 cubits. Then he went inside and measured the post of the door 2 cubits, and the door 6 cubits, and the width of the door 7 cubits. I mean, right down to the wire on everything in the temple he measured. So, and this is showing him the new temple. So he made that will be built, that is not yet built, because it's a vision. So he measured the length there of it 20 cubits, and the width 20 cubits before the temple. And he said unto me, this is the most set apart place, or the Holy of Holies, the set apart of set aparts. 5. After he measured the wall of the house 6 cubits, the width of it, every side of the room, 4 cubits round, all around the house on every side, 4 square. Verse 6. And the side rooms were three, one over another. In other words, one right over another, and 30 in order. And they entered into the wall which was of the house for the side rooms round, or all around, that they might have hold, but they had not hold in the wall of the house. So they weren't attached to the wall in the house. Verse 7. And there was an enlarging and a winding about still upward to the side rooms, for the winding about of the house went still upward round, or all around the house. Therefore the width of the house was still upward, and so increased from the lowest chamber to the highest that's in the midst. Now think about that. That's just telling you there's more than one level of this temple. Floors. Verse 8. I saw also the height of the house all around. The foundations of the side rooms were a full reed of 6 great cubits. So a reed is 6 cubits. Okay? And they had a sacred cubit. That was a sacred measurement. And a cubit at regular is from here to here on a man. Okay? And that varies a little bit, doesn't it? But I think this of a celestial being. Okay? Chapter 41. Afterward he brought me to the temple, and measured the post 6 cubits broad on the one side and 6 cubits broad on the other side, which was the width of the tabernacle. And the width of the door was 10 cubits, and the side of the door was 5 cubits. So in other words, height and width. Okay, on the one side and 5 cubits on the other side, and he measured the length thereof 40 cubits, and the width 20 cubits. Then he went inside and measured the post of the door 2 cubits, and the door 6 cubits, and the width of the door 7 cubits. So he measured the length of it 20 cubits, and the width of the width 20 cubits before the temple. And he said unto me, This is the most set apart place. Talking about the temple. Afterward he measured the wall of the house to be 6 cubits, and the width on every side of the room 4 cubits, all around the house on every side. And the side rooms were three, one above the other, and 30 in order. Okay, there's 30 all together. And they entered into the wall which was of the house for 3 rooms round about, or all around, that they might have hold, or they may have control, but they had not control in the wall. They were not connected into the wall of the house. And there was an enlarging and a winding all around, still upward to the side rooms, in other words, going up to another level, for the winding about of the house went still upward round about the house. Therefore the width of the house was still up, and to increase from the lowest chamber or room to the highest in the midst. I saw also the height of the house round about, and the foundations of the side rooms were full reed of 6 cubits. Each reed was to measure 6 full cubits. Verse 9, the thickness of the wall which was for the side rooms outside was 5 cubits, and that which was left was the place of the side rooms that were inside. And between the rooms was the wideness of 20 cubits, or in other words, the width of 20 cubits all around the house on every side. And the doors of the side rooms were toward the place that was left, one door toward the north and another door toward the south. And the width of the place that was left was 5 cubits round about, or all around it, all the way around. Verse 12, now the building that was before the separate area at the end toward the west was 70 cubits wide, and the wall of the building was 5 cubits thick round about, or all around the measurement, and the length of it was 90 cubits. 13, so he measured the house 100 cubits long, and the separate place, and the building with the walls of it 100 cubits long. Also the width of the face of the house, or the front of the house, and of the separate place toward the east, and 100 cubits. And he measured the length of the building over against the separate place, set apart from the rest, which was behind it, and the galleries of it on one side and on the other side 100 cubits, with the inner temple and the porches of the court, the doorposts and the narrow windows, and the galleries round about on their 3 stories over against the door, paneled with wood round about, and from the ground up to the windows, and the windows were covered. They had coverings over them. To that above the door, even unto the inner house, and outside, and by all the wall all around, within and without, or on the inside and on the out by measure. And it was made with cherubims, which are a form of angelic being, okay, something celestial that comes from the Shamayim, okay, and it was made with cherubims, plural, and a pine and palm trees carved on there, so these are carving, so that a palm tree was between a cherub, singular, and a cherub, and every cherub had two faces. We don't know exactly, we have some descriptions in here what cherubs look like. What we know they don't look like is baby angels, okay, as that comes from Greek type thinking, okay, not from Hebraic thought. So that the face of a man was toward the palm tree on one side, and the face of a young lion toward the palm tree on the other side. It was made through all the house all around. In other words, they had these same carvings. For the ground, from the ground unto above the door, until the top of the door, were cherubim, plural, and palm trees made. And on the wall of the temple, the doorposts of the temple were squared, and the face of the sanctuary, the set apart area, the sanctuary, the appearance of the one as the appearance of another. They were all the same. Verse 22, the altar of the wood was 3 cubits high, and the length of it was 2 cubits. And the corners of it, and the length of it, and the walls of it were of wood. And he said unto me, this is the table that is before Yahuwah, okay, in the most set apart place. The spirit of Yahuwah is actually what it's before. Verse 23, and the temple and the sanctuary had 2 doors, and the doors had 2 leaves apiece, turning leaves to leaves for the one door, and 2 leaves of the other door. And there were made on them, the doors of the temple, cherubim and palm trees, like as were made upon the walls. And there were thick planks upon the face of the porch outside, and there were narrow windows and palm trees on one side, and on the other side, on the sides of the porch. Okay? And upon the side rooms of the house and the thick planks. Chapter 42. Then he brought me, this is all thus saith Ezekiel as he describes this vision. Okay, it's a long part of this. Then he brought me forth, the Ruach brought him forth to the outer, it was definitely a spirit when I say the Ruach, okay? Outer court, the way toward the north, and he brought me into the room that was opposite the separate place, and which was before the building toward the north. Before the length of 100 cubits was the north door, and the width 5 cubits. Over against, or on the other side, 20 cubits, which were for the inner court, and opposite the pavement, which was for the outer court, was the gallery against gallery in 3 stories, so 3 stories high. And before the rooms was a walk of 10 cubits, or like a hallway, 10 cubits wide inside, a way of 1 cubit, and their doors toward the north. Now the upper rooms were shorter, for the galleries were higher than these, then the lower, and then the middlemost of the building. So the upper courts were shorter as it went up. Okay? For they were in 3 stories, but had not pillars, or they did not have pillars as pillars of the courts. Therefore, the upper room were set back more than the lower, and the middlemost from the ground. Verse 7, and the wall that was outside over against the rooms toward the utter court of the forepart part of the rooms, the length of it was 50 cubits. For the length of the rooms that were in the utter court were 50 cubits, and lo, or behold, before the temple were 100 cubits. Verse 9, and from under these rooms was the entry on the east side, as one goes into them from the outer court. The chamber, or the rooms, were in the thickness, were the same thickness as of the wall of the court toward the east, opposite the temple courtyard, and opposite the building. And the way before them was like the appearance of the rooms which were toward the north, or the same as the rooms towards the north, as long as they were toward the north, as long as they, and as wide as they, and all their goings out were both according to their fashion, or the same fashion, and according to their doors. And according to the doors of the rooms that were toward the south was a door in the head, or in the front of the way, even the way directly before the wall toward the east, as one enters into them. Then said he, the one that brought him in, unto me, the Spirit, or Ruach, the north room and the south rooms, the north rooms, plural, and the south rooms, which are before the separate room, they are set apart rooms. Okay, they are set apart rooms where the Kohanim, or the priests, that approach unto Yahuwah, or his Ruach actually, shall eat the most set apart things. There shall they lay the most set apart things, and the food offering, and the sin offering, and the trespass offering, for the place is set apart. Verse 14, when the Kohanim enter into it, then will they not go out of the set apart place into the outer court, but there they will lay their garments inside while they minister, for they are set apart, and shall put on other garments, and shall approach to those things which are for the people. In other words, they have separate garments than they do when they go in before the Spirit, or the Ruach of Yahuwah. Now when he had made an end of measuring the inner house, he brought me forward toward the gate, whose prospect, or which is facing toward the east, and measured it all around. He measured the east side with a measuring reed, 500 reeds, with the measuring reed round about. He already told you each measuring reed's 3 cubits. He measured the north side 500 reeds, and with the measuring reed round about it. He measured the south side 500 reeds with the measuring reed. He turned about to the west side and measured 500 reeds with the measuring reed. Okay? Verse 20. He measured it by 4 sides. He had a wall all the way around, 500 reeds long and 500 reeds wide, to make a separation between the sanctuary and the common place. Got profane place in the King James. Common means where the regular people gather. Okay? Verse 43. After that he brought me to the gate, even the gate that looks toward the east. And behold, the glory of Yahuwah, of the Yahuwah of Israel, which is the Ruach HaKodesh, came from the way of the east, and his voice was like a noise of many waters, and the earth shined with his glory, the Ruach's glory, which is the glory of Yahuwah as well. Verse 3, and it was according to the appearance of the vision which I saw, even according to the vision that I saw when I came to destroy the city. He saw a vision to destroy the city as well, earlier. Okay, and the visions were like the vision that I saw by the river Chebar earlier, and I fell upon my face. And the glory of Yahuwah, again, which is the Ruach, came unto the house by the way of the gate, whose prospect is toward the east. So the Spirit, which is what he's talking about here, the glory of Yahuwah, the Spirit, the Ruach, took me up, brought me into the inner court, and behold, the glory of Yahuwah filled that whole house. And I heard him speaking unto me out of the house, the Ruach, the glory of Yahuwah, and a man stood by me, and he said unto me, okay, and this is in red, and the man stood by me, and he, the Spirit, the Ruach, said, not the man, said unto me, Son of man, this is all in red, thus saith Yahuwah, as spoken by the Ruach. And he said unto me, Son of man, the place of my throne, and the place of the soles of my feet, where I dwell in the midst of the bin of Israel, forever, and my set apart name shall the house of Israel no more defile, neither they nor their kings by their whoredom or harlotry, nor by the carcasses of their kings in their high places. Okay? And obviously this is saying no more. This is when we're getting ready to go into Yahuwah's kingdom out of the millennial reign. This is what he's seeing in a vision. And their settings of their threshold by my threshold, and their posts by my post, and the wall between me and them, they have even defiled my set apart name by their abomination or their detestable practices that they have committed, wherefore I have consumed them in my anger. Okay, the ones that committed these things will be consumed in the lake of fire at the time of the let me get the right word here. My brain's not wanting to jump it out. Rosh Hashanah, okay, or the Day of Atonement. That's when this is all getting ready to happen. That's why they call it atonement. The atonement's going to be paid then for those that didn't come under the shed blood, okay, and chose not to, even at the very end, not just at the first resurrection. And their settings of their threshold, because there's going to be people still sinning during the millennial reign, even though they don't have Satan to tempt them, okay? So you have to get that into place. So this says there's going to be nothing left of their carcasses of their kings in their high places, okay? Verse 8, in their settings of their threshold by my thresholds, it means the temple, and their posts by my posts, and the wall between me and them, they have even defiled his set apart name through their practices, through their detestable practices, that they have committed, wherefore I have consumed them in my anger, the ones that committed those things. And that's when fire rains down out of heaven. We saw it earlier in a previous chapter. We just went over it. Verse 9. Now let them put away their whoredoms. That's talking about the rest of Israel, both physical and spiritual at this time. And obviously the spiritual ones don't have these, no matter what nation they came from. And the carcasses of their kings, physical Israel, far from me, and I will dwell in the midst of them forever. Now, do you think he's talking about Dawood? No, I don't either. I think he's talking about the ones that were the evil kings, which there were many. Okay? Their carcasses. They're not coming into the kingdom. Verse 10. You, son of man, talking about the evil ones, not the good kings. You, son of man, show the house to the house of Israel. In other words, you, Ezekiel, show this or explain this vision to the house of Israel. And he did that by writing in this book as well as proclaiming it. That they may be ashamed of their lawlessness, and let them measure the pattern. But that's all they do. And if they be ashamed of all that they have done, show them the form of the house, and the fashion thereof, and the goings out thereof, and the comings in of it, and all the forms of it, and all the ordinances that he just laid out of it, and all the forms of it, and all the laws, okay, right rulings of it, and write it in their sight, that they may keep the whole form of it, and all the regulations of it, and do them. This is the right ruling, or talking about his Torah, of the house upon the top of the mountain. The whole limit of it round about shall be set apart. Behold, this is the Torah of the house, or the right ruling of the house. And these are the measures of the altar after the cubits. This is all thus saith Yahuwah, Adonai Yahuwah, through the Ruach. The cubit is a cubit, a hand's width. Even the bottom shall be a cubit, and the width a cubit. And the border of it by the edge of it all around shall be a span, and this shall be the higher place of the altar. This is ancient measurements of the altar. Verse 14, and from the bottom upon the ground that sits upon the ground, even the lower ledge shall be 2 cubits, and the width 1 cubit, and from the smaller ledge even to the greater ledge shall be 4 cubits, and the width 1 cubit. So the altar shall be 4 cubits, and from the altar from the altar and on up shall be 4 horns. And the altar shall be 12 cubits long and 12 wide, square in 4 squares of it. Verse 17. And the ledge shall be 14 cubits long and 14 wide in the 4 squares thereof, because they're going to be square in measurement. And the border around it shall be 1/2 cubit, and the bottom of it shall be a cubit around, and his stairs will look toward the east gate of the temple. And he said unto me, Son of man, again the Ruach said unto him, the Spirit, who is the Spirit of Yahuwah, his glory, okay? And that's the one that speaks to Israel and speaks to us and teaches us all things today. And he said unto me, Son of man, thus saith Adonai Yahuwah. Now if that was Yahuwah speaking, why would he say, Thus saith Adonai Yahuwah? Think about it. These are the ordinance of the altar in the day when they shall make it, to offer burnt offerings thereof, and to sprinkle blood on it. They haven't built this temple yet. And you shall give to the Kohanim, or the priests of the Levites, that be of the seed of Zodok, the Zodokite priesthood, that are sons of Aaron, which approach me to minister unto me, saith Adonai Yahuwah, a young bullock for a sin offering. And you shall take of the blood thereof, or the blood of it, and put it on the 4 horns of it, and on the 4 corners of the ledge, and upon the border all around. With this you will cleanse and purge it. You shall take the bullock also of the sin offering, okay, and he shall burn it in the appointed place, or the place appointed, of the house outside the sanctuary. And on the 2nd day you will offer a male goat without blemish or without defect for a sin offering, and they shall cleanse the altar as they did cleanse it with the bullock. So you have to have, the red heifer, and you also got to have this sin offering. When you have made an end of cleansing it, you shall offer a young bullock without blemish or without defect. And you shall offer them before Yahuwah, and the Kohanim, or the priests, shall cast salt upon them, and they shall and they will offer them up for a burnt offering unto Yahuwah. 7 days will you prepare every day a goat for a sin offering. They shall also prepare a young bullock and a ram out of the flock without blemish. 7 days shall you make atonement before the altar and purify it. And you will dedicate themselves, and they will dedicate themselves. And when these days are expired, or finished, it shall be that upon the 8th day, this obviously will take effect on some tabernacle prior to the new heaven and new earth. Okay, and also on a Feast of Tabernacles prior to the building of the temple. And so forward, the Kohanim shall make you, or the priest, shall make your burnt offerings upon the altar, because they're going to be doing that during the millennial reign, and your peace offerings, or thank offerings, and I will accept you, saith Adonai Yahuwah. We're going to call it a stop right there. We're going to start part 8 here next. Okay? Part 8, start here. And if you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, I forgot to say that on the last video, but I'm sure that doesn't matter if I forgot once. But if you have not yet subscribed, please subscribe so that more people will end up seeing this, because the more people subscribe to this channel, more people will know that this channel is here. And give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, okay? And again, give it a share. If you share it, more people are going to see it, more people maybe will subscribe, and more people will see it, okay? And then hit the notification bell so you get notified of our next video. And may Yahuwah bless until we meet again.